2026 is already looking like an absolutely stacked year for Nintendo fans. From Splatoon Raiders to Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave, Pokopia to the Dustbloods, we already know about so many games coming to Nintendo Switch 2 in 2026, but yet there is still so much that's up in the air and a lot of things to speculate on. So today, in honor of the Happy New Year, it's time for some new predictions. We're going to be going over everything that I think could happen in the world of Nintendo over the course of the next 12 months. So sit back, relax, and let's touch base. But before we kick things off today, I just want to start by saying thank you. Because if you haven't been paying attention, this past year, 2025, was absolutely amazing in terms of growth on YouTube. When we started the year back in January, I was at about 400,000 subscribers. I had my big 24-hour subscriber special for that milestone, and I had mentioned on that stream that I would have loved to have hit 500,000 subscribers by the year's end. Never in my wildest dreams did I think that we would hit that goal halfway through the year, because by December, we were already at 650,000 subscribers. The fact that we grew 250,000 subscribers in 12 months time is absolutely absurd. And I know I've been cranking out a lot of videos and doing a lot of streams and doing a lot of vlogs, but all of this is thanks to you. Everybody who left a comment on one of my videos last year, everyone who left a like, anyone who shared one of my videos, and anyone who's clicked that subscribe button, it truly means the world to me. You are allowing me to do what I do for a living, and I have to give a very, very special thank you to all of my members on my YouTube channel as well, because you are literally my direct line of support. You are the lifeblood to the channel. You are what enabled me to randomly do a Bleach read through in the middle of October and go do all these other wild streams that normally people within my niche wouldn't want to go out of their way to experiment on. So massive, massive thank you to each and every one of you for supporting the channel in whichever way that you did last year. And if you've ever wanted to directly support me, once again, the best way to do that is by becoming a member right here on the YouTube channel. You get so many amazing member benefits, exclusive emotes, special Discord roles, member VODs for the streams. We have community nights, member movie nights. It's just been so much fun hanging out with all of you in 2025, and I cannot wait to see what we're going to do together in 2026. Now, with that being said, let's talk about Nintendo in 2026. And I guess I just want to start things off by talking about how weird the beginning of this year already feels if you're a Nintendo fan. Obviously, we are now 6 months into the Switch 2's life cycle. We already got Mario Kart, Donkey Kong, a new Kirby Air Ride, Hyrule Warriors, Metroid Prime, and Pokemon, all within the first 6 months, plus all the Switch 2 editions, plus all the third-party games. And we're going into this year already knowing about so many titles. We've got Pokopia, Splatoon Raiders, the next Fire Emblem game, the new FromSoft game, the Dustbloods, that's being developed exclusively for Switch 2. We've got Mario Tennis, we've got Yoshi, we've got games that are going to be on Switch 1 and Switch 2, things like Rhythm Heaven and Tomodachi Life, and we've got more Switch 2 editions with things like Mario Wonder and Animal Crossing. That lineup is stacked already, and honestly, barring one other game I'm going to talk about during my predictions, I feel like Nintendo, if they wanted to, could coast through this year with all the games we already know about, plus the one big one that I'm going to kick my predictions off with, and that would probably be fine for them. Maybe release a couple new Switch 2 editions here or there, maybe have a couple new smaller games that release on both Switch and Switch 2, but that's kind of all they need to do right now. I feel like you look at the state of the industry, you look at the sales charts in Japan, Nintendo is lighting everything on fire. You've even got the Switch and Switch 2 editions of some of these games both charting this same week. It's kind of absurd how much the Switch 2 has taken over, and while I feel like the general overall sentiment on the Switch 2 is maybe not as positive right now as it was for the same point in the lifespan of the Switch 1, a lot of that is obviously due to the pricing and how people are feeling about game key cards, but undeniably, the system is a success, and undeniably, there have been some really good games on the system. So it's wild going into this new year already knowing so many games, when normally at this time of a life cycle, at the beginning of the first full year of a new Nintendo console, we maybe only know like 1 or 2 other games, and the rest of them all get announced throughout Nintendo Directs throughout the course of the calendar year. And that's another thing I want to bring up here, right? Because I'm recording this 2 days before the video is going to get uploaded. So that leaves me a 48-hour window in which Nintendo could just make me feel very unlucky and announce a Nintendo Direct, and then I'll have to do a whole separate video about Nintendo Direct predictions for the Q1 Nintendo Direct. But that is not what we're talking about today. We are talking about my general overall predictions for Nintendo in 2026. And my first big, guaranteed, lock it in, this is absolutely happening prediction. If this does not end up happening, I'm retiring from YouTube right now. I just had that really sappy speech in the beginning of this, talking about how much I appreciate all of you for making this my dream job. But look, I will quit right now if Pokemon Day comes and we don't get Gen 10 of Pokemon announced for this holiday season. This is going to happen. This is the 30th anniversary year for Pokemon. And yes, we already have Pokopia. Yes, Legend ZA just came out. Yes, a lot of us are playing through the DLC quite literally right now. It doesn't matter. Gen 10 of Pokemon is coming for the anniversary. It's going to get announced on Pokemon Day, and it's going to come out this holiday season. And I'm also going to make the prediction it is exclusive to Switch 2. I know it's kind of a weird thing to think about because a lot of the Pokemon games have been on both Switch 1 and Switch 2. They had that Switch 2 upgrade for Scarlet and Violet that finally made the game playable. Obviously, there was the full Switch 2 edition of Legend ZA. And they're sitting on a massive install base with the original Nintendo Switch. So while I know there's a lot of people who would like to see the next major generation of Pokemon on Switch 1 in addition to Switch 2, I don't think they're going to do it. I think this game, this generation, is Pokemon Company's opportunity to finally win back the people that have soured on the mainline Pokemon games. I know far too many people who dropped around the time of Sword and Shield that didn't even play Scarlet and Violet. And I know a lot of people who played Scarlet and Violet hated the technical aspects and basically swore off Pokemon. Now, I'm seeing some people coming back with the Legends series, but they need to do something to get those fans who are only interested in the Legends games back to the mainstream games. And I think what they are doing is cooking up a really massive experience for Gen 10 that is going to fully take advantage of this new system that is going to launch this holiday season. I think we could be looking at a really crazy situation this holiday season with GTA releasing on consoles and then also having a brand new Pokemon game. Sales charts are going to be burning up. Now, with that being said, right, I still think there is going to be something for Switch 1 Pokemon fans for the 30th anniversary. And the first thing, which I am surprised that everyone seems to be forgetting about in their big Nintendo prediction videos for 2026, is Pokemon Champions. Literally the meta of Pokemon for this year's Worlds is going to be played in Pokemon Champions, and that game hasn't even come out yet. They said it was going to come out last year. It didn't come out last year. They ended up delaying it. We still don't have a release date for it. I feel like Pokemon Champions is probably going to get a release date and potentially maybe even a shadow drop on Pokemon Day. And I think that is going to be the experience for Pokemon fans on Switch 1 that are hankering for something new. But if you want the full next generation of Pokemon, sorry, you're going to have to get your Switch 2 now. Now, of course, there's also the big fan pee in the room that we have to address, which is the long rumored NSO app versions of Gen 1, Gen 2, and Gen 3. And I would love for this to finally be a thing. I love all of those games. I would love to play them with save states on my Switch or on my Switch 2. I genuinely do not think it is happening for anything other than Gen 1. And I still don't even feel totally sure about Gen 1 coming to the Switch Online app. Again, if they were ever going to do it, this is the year. It's a big 30th anniversary, but something is telling me they just want to avoid re-releasing these games at all costs. I remember way back when Pokemon Stadium first came on the N64 NSO app, all the conversations that people were having about, oh, this means we're finally going to get Gen 1 on the Game Boy NSO and you could transfer your teams in and then you could play Pokemon Stadium. Nope. That came and went. I played through all of Pokemon Stadium on the N64 NSO app with exclusively rental Pokemon, and I was happy about it, right? Like, I think in an ideal world, we would see all of the old generations of Pokemon come to Switch Online with Pokemon Home connectivity, so you could finally have Pokemon from Gen 1, Gen 2, and Gen 3 in a modern Pokemon game. But I just genuinely don't think that's going to happen. I think if we get anything, It's going to be red, blue, and yellow in honor of the anniversary, and that's going to be it. Now, obviously, we already know about Coliseum and XD eventually coming to NSO, so that could also happen. Or maybe we'll get some of the spin-off games like Pokemon Pinball, but realistically, I'm not expecting too much other than potentially a shadow drop of Gen 1. But again, I still am not feeling super confident about that. The one big Pokemon prediction I'm making is Switch 2 exclusive Gen 10 announced during Pokemon Day, releasing this holiday season in honor of the big 30th anniversary of Pokemon. Now, while we're on the topic of anniversaries, this is another reason why this year is very strange in terms of Nintendo, because obviously at the end of last year, we started to celebrate Mario's 40th anniversary. We got the announcements of Yoshi for the Mario 40th, very strange. We obviously got Mario Galaxy 1 and 2 coming to Switch and Switch 2. We got the announcement of Mario Tennis, and of course the Mario Galaxy 2 movie. Now, real quick, I actually want to throw in a little Mario Galaxy movie prediction right now, okay? Hear me out. I think the Easter egg at the very end of the movie, the little end credit stinger, I think is going to be a play on the end of the original Mario Galaxy game where you can now play as Luigi, and it's actually going to be a teaser for an upcoming Luigi's Mansion movie. Because we already know, correct me if I'm wrong, about a Donkey Kong movie that is in development, but I feel like a spin-off that would make a lot of sense would be Luigi's Mansion. And the reason why I'm bringing this up now is because it's directly related to another one of my predictions. It has been a while since the last time that we had a new Luigi's Mansion game, and these games are normally technical showpieces for the systems that they're on. Luigi's Mansion 3 is still to this day one of the prettiest Switch games. We also had Dark Moon, which was an awesome experience to play in 3D on the 3DS for the very first time that it came out. And let's not forget the original Luigi's Mansion, which just recently got released on GameCube NSO, right? That game was a technical showpiece at the launch of the GameCube, with all the different fabric effects and all the different particle effects with the fire and the ice, the lighting, the cool designs of the characters. The Luigi's Mansion games are great. And we also don't know what the heck Next Level Games has been up to for a while. My guess is I think they're working on the next Luigi's Mansion game, and this is one of those games that I feel pretty certain we're going to hear about before the end of the year. I think it would make a lot of sense for the next Luigi's Mansion game to come out in October around the holiday season, but I'm still not entirely convinced of that being the case. However, I do kind of feel like now would be the right time, because on the topic of anniversaries and Mario and things we might see, I am honestly not expecting a new 3D Mario this year. We just got Donkey Kong Bonanza that was just made by the Odyssey team. I know there's a lot of people who think it's silly to think that there also isn't another team making some type of 3D Mario, and maybe we get a 3D World style adventure. Maybe we get a new 2D game, but we're also getting Mario Wonder Switch 2 edition, so that would be strange. Or maybe we'll finally get the long-awaited Mario Maker, either a Switch 2 edition of Mario Maker 2 or a full-out Mario Maker 3 with mouse controls. All of those would be great, but none of those are my predictions for the Mario game this year. I know it seems strange. It's not the year of Luigi. It's the Mario Brothers 40th, but Luigi is still a Mario brother, and I think Luigi's Mansion 4 makes a lot of sense for this holiday season. But of course, another Mario-related announcement that makes a lot of sense for that 40th anniversary is DLC for Mario Kart World. And this is another one of my really big predictions. I fully expect that we are going to see Mario Kart World DLC this year. And while I think there are going to be free aspects to the DLC, I think there's going to be a couple additional free costumes for people who already own it, and maybe 200cc added as a free thing. I think for the most part, the majority of the DLC for Mario Kart World will be paid. And I know that is not what people want to hear. Obviously, there was that whole massive price discussion. Is Mario Kart World worth the $80? I have said my piece. I loved that game. I thought the soundtrack for the game is phenomenal. I'm very happy that it was bundled with my Switch 2. I think it is perfectly worth the extra $50 if you get the Switch 2 bundle. Do I believe it's really worth, in the state that it is now, the $80 when you buy it separately? Especially when you can get Sonic Racing Cross Worlds or Kirby Air Riders for the same price? No, I'd probably rather play one of those two games. I think you get a lot more bang for your buck currently. However, I think by the end of the life cycle of Mario Kart World, I do think it's going to be, if not the best, one of the best Mario Kart experiences ever. And I do think there's still a lot of room to do really cool things for Mario Kart World. And I also think that if you are an NSO subscriber at that expansion pass tier or up, I think what they're going to do is they're going to give you that paid DLC complimentary with your NSO subscription. They did that for Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. They did that for Happy Home Designer, or Happy Home, what was it? Happy Home Paradise. That was for Animal Crossing on Switch, as well as the Splatoon 2 Octo expansion, right? Those were all paid upgrades for those games that eventually got added complimentary to the service if you were an expansion pack owner. I think the same thing is going to be the case with Mario Kart World, but I do think if you don't own the expansion pack, you're probably going to have to pay for the Mario Kart World DLC. And I can tell you right now, I am already not looking forward to all of the angry commenters and all the angry tweets and all the angry posts reading about how much of a ripoff it is that Mario Kart is costing more money and they're going to have to pay for more DLC. It's going to be very annoying to see over the course of the next year. But at the same time, I also feel like the discussion is justified, right? If people don't feel like they got their money's worth out of the base $80 Mario Kart World, and now you got to pay more money for more stuff that probably would have been in the game back during like the GameCube era or the Wii era when you couldn't just add more stuff to it for free later on, I can understand why people would be upset. And again, I have expansion pass, so I feel like I'll probably get access to this with no additional fee. But I do think, again, overall, the majority of the DLC for Mario Kart World will indeed be paid. And since we're on the topic of the expansion pass, now also seems like a good opportunity to throw a little prediction in there for myself. I love the Nintendo 64. If you've ever gone onto my Switch Online profile, you've seen that my most played game on Switch 2 and on Switch 1 actually is the N64 Switch Online app. I just adore that system's library. I grew up with the Nintendo 64. I can get infinite replayability out of stuff like the Banjo-Kazooie games and Super Mario 64 and the N64 Zelda games, but there are still quite a few games missing from that library. And we're diving into some pretty cool ones now. You know, last month we got Rayman, we got Tonic Trouble, but I still think there's a lot of other cool games on the way specifically for N64 NSO. I feel like I could do a whole separate video predicting like 100 games that could one day come to Switch Online, but I want to make a very specific prediction today. I'm putting on my glasses for this one so I could read this. I am predicting that 3 or more of the following games will come to N64 NSO within the next calendar year. And these are the 8 games that I'm predicting we might see. I think 3 of them at least will be on N64 app by the end of this year. I wrote down Donkey Kong 64, no brainer. I wrote down Snowboard Kids, Rocket Robot on Wheels, which is another strange platformer of that era. As soon as I saw Tonic Trouble, I was like, why don't we have rockets? So I think Rocket Robot on Wheels. I think Glover, right? I'm pretty sure that was a potential leak. I think people were talking about Glover being trademarked or something for Switch Online. I remember the whole story, but essentially Glover seems like something that'll actually be there. And fun fact, Glover was the second game I ever owned on the N64. My first game ever was Banjo-Kazooie. Then I got Glover afterwards. I thought it was absolute garbage that you could just fall off cliffs. That was the first time I ever found out about a bottomless pit in a video game, and immediately I swore off it. But I know that game has its fans. Shout out to you, HMK. I think we might see Glover. I also wrote down Mystical Ninja, the Goemon game that's on N64. Mischief Makers, because Treasure actually just put up a thing on their Twitter of all the games that they've developed that are on the Nintendo Switch Online apps. Their big omission right now is Mischief Makers. I could see that coming to it too. The original Super Smash Brothers, that is also something I'm shocked is not already on there. And then finally, Cruisin' World or Cruisin' USA. Those Cruisin' games, I always forget, are technically first-party titles, and I just genuinely want Cruisin' World on there because I like the theme song. Like, you got the feel, you got the power to cruise the world, down, down, down. Like, I remember that as a kid, jamming out to Cruisin' World. Even if I don't end up playing the game, I would like to just have that on the N64 Switch Online app and listen to it. So those are my predictions for some N64 games I think we could see on the N64 app. Again, I think we are getting at least 3 of those. Now, moving on, again, we were talking about anniversaries. We were talking about the Mario anniversary from last year bleeding into this year. Obviously, this year is another major first-party Nintendo anniversary, and that is, of course, the 40th anniversary of The Legend of Zelda. Now, this is another weird one for me. I've seen a lot of people make bold swings saying that we're going to be getting that Ocarina of Time remake this year, saying that we're going to get the sequel to Tears of the Kingdom. I've seen some other people saying that we're going to get remake games of the Oracle games. I don't think we're going to get any of that. My prediction for Zelda's 40th, at least this year, in 2026, is that we get a trailer for the Zelda movie that's coming in 2027. We get some more casting reveals. We maybe end up getting a Zelda Direct for the anniversary that maybe teases the next mainline Zelda game. But other than that, I just don't think we are getting a big Zelda game this year. The only one that I keep throwing around in my head is potentially like a Zelda Dungeon Maker type game. Obviously, people loved Mario Maker. I think they kind of tested the concept with the Dungeon Maker that I believe was in Link's Awakening, right, with the Dampé dungeons. I think they could do something really cool with the Zelda Maker, but realistically, my big prediction for Zelda in 2026 is not a new game. It's one, that we're going to get the trailer for the Zelda movie and cast, and two, and this is kind of bleeding into entertainment predictions, but I feel very strongly about it. My other big prediction for Zelda in 2026 is we get the official confirmation that Zelda is coming to Epic Universe in Orlando. Now, we've all seen the image of Aonuma breaking ground at one of the Universal parks. I think it is a matter of time. They quite literally have Zelda characters in the stained glass windows in the Nintendo store in Epic Universe. I saw it with my own eyes. I was there last year. I really do think that is what they're going to do to celebrate the big Zelda anniversary. And I know some people are going, that's wild. There's no way. Of course there's got to be a Zelda game. Well, we did just get Echoes of Wisdom 2 years ago. And we did just get Switch 2 editions of Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild at the launch of Switch 2. And if you remember, the big announcement during that Mario anniversary direct, Mario whatever anniversary thing, was not a Mario game. We had Mario Tennis, we had the Galaxy games or whatever, but the big announcement was Galaxy, right? The big announcement was that we were getting a Super Mario Galaxy movie. So I think it would make sense that the big announcement for Zelda's anniversary is also going to skew more on the entertainment side than on the gaming side. So again, my big prediction for Zelda's 40th is that we get the announcement of Hyrule coming to Universal Epic Universe, and we get the trailer for the Zelda movie, but we don't actually get a mainline Zelda game released this year. And while I hate to keep talking about anniversaries, it's been happening a lot this video with Pokemon's 30th, Mario's 40th, Zelda's 40th, but this year is also Dragon Quest's 40th. Now, of course, we just got the release of Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD 2D Remake, and Dragon Quest VII Reimagined is coming out next month. However, I think the time is finally now. I think in May, alongside their big presentation for the 40th anniversary, which there already is a logo of celebrating the 40th anniversary, I think we get the full re-reveal of Dragon Quest XII. I think the game is still coming to Switch 1 in addition to Switch 2. And the reason I bring this up now is I think this is a trend we're going to see continue throughout the course of 2026. I was stunned during the Game Awards when I saw that that new Mega Man game is coming out in 2027 for the original Switch still. But then I realized it, and if I'm a game developer, of course I want to have my game on as many systems as possible. And the Switch has the biggest install base in Nintendo history, and it's fully backwards compatible with their new systems. So of course, if you're a developer and your game can run on Switch 1, why would you not put it on Switch 1? We're even seeing this with Nintendo, right? Rhythm Heaven and Tomodachi Life, those games are not technical showpieces. So of course they're going to throw those games on Switch 1 in addition to Switch 2 to actually be able to hit a wider audience. I think this is going to be something that we're going to see a lot over the course of the next year. I would not be surprised if multiple major third-party games get announced for both Switch and Switch 2, and I really do think the trend is going to continue throughout the entire course of the year. I think it'll probably die off like mid-2027, but I think at least for the time being, we are going to get more of what we saw in those Nintendo Directs last year, where they had the little thing in the corner that said, this game is on Switch 1 and Switch 2, or this game is exclusive to Switch 2. I think they're going to have to keep making those clarifications in every Nintendo Direct throughout the course of 2026. Now, we just talked about Dragon Quest. I also want to bring up another Square Enix franchise, and that is something that's actually been in the news as of late. Yoshi P has been mentioning that he wants to bring Final Fantasy XIV to Switch 2. He's been talking about this for a while, dating back to before the Switch 2 was even revealed, so I do think the time is now. I think this year, at one of the fan fests, I believe there's one in Anaheim, there's one I think that's in Tokyo, and I think there's one in Berlin. I don't know exactly where, but I think it is Japan, Germany, and America. I think during one of those fan fests, we get the reveal that Final Fantasy XIV is coming to Switch 2. This is something that makes a lot of sense too, with the fact that you have built into the Joy-Con 2's mouse support. I think that will be such a neat way to actually play the game and get more people on board, where instead of having to connect a USB mouse, it's literally built into the Joy-Con. You can have all your hotkeys and everything. It's going to be great. It's going to make me jump back into Final Fantasy XIV. I've already spent hundreds of hours in that game on PC, and while I do have it on my PlayStation, I think there's just not something that I want. It's not something I want to sit in front of the TV and play, right? It's something that I either would want to play in handheld mode, which I guess technically I could do on the Steam Deck, but it requires a lot of different jumps. And I also want to be able to play in mouse mode when I want to. And again, I feel like because of the Switch 2 having the mouse controls within the Joy-Con 2 and Yoshi P multiple times expressing interest that he wants to bring the game over, FF14 on Switch 2 seems almost like a lock this year. Now, something that's a little more of a wild card in terms of Square Enix, but also still in the realm of Final Fantasy, is that I actually think during a Nintendo Direct this year, we are going to see a trailer for Part 3 of the Final Fantasy VII Remake. Now, obviously, Remake is coming out on Switch 2 next week. Rebirth, we already know, is going to be coming to the system. The producers have already said they are planning on bringing those games, including, because they don't just say like Rebirth and Remake. They say the Trilogy Remake series. So the third game is definitely coming to Switch 2. But I also think it's going to be coming to Switch 2 sooner than people are expecting. I don't know what's going on with the exclusivity for Sony right now, but I would not be surprised if one of the pre-release trailers ends up in a Nintendo Direct, which would be wild. I was still blown away by the fact that we got a Resident Evil Requiem trailer in one of the Directs last year. I thought, man, that is a huge deal, seeing these major third parties in Japan putting their games day and date on the Switch 2. And I think now that more of these companies are finally getting their hands on dev kits, we're going to see even more of that moving into 2026. So again, I do think they're going to want to jump on the opportunity, and I think because no matter what, we're going to see a trailer for Part 3 of the Final Fantasy VII Remake series this year. My guess is we're probably going to see the first one at the Game Awards, because I think they did Rebirth at the Game Awards as well, and that would make sense because my assumption is that game is going to come out on 7/7/2027, which also lines up with the anniversary. There's just a lot of things, the stars are aligning for Part 3 to come out next year. Now, whether or not, again, it comes out day and date with Switch 2, that's up for debate, but I do think, again, we are going to see within this calendar year a Final Fantasy VII Part 3 Remake trailer in one of the Nintendo Directs. And finally, rounding out the RPG talk, I do actually think the time is now. I do think this year we get the reveal and the release of Monolith Soft's next project. Now, I am old enough to remember not just hearing about this game, but reporting on when they were hiring for their next big project all those years ago. That was that key art of like the girl in the nice outfit with that really beautiful vista on the artwork, and they were saying, we're now hiring for the next big game. And then obviously we got the definitive edition of Xenoblade Chronicles X, and 3 came out, and Future Redeemed, and people still want to see the Xenoblade games get some type of Switch 2 edition or some type of Switch upgrade, like the free upgrades along the lines of like 3D World or something. I know there was a rumored one about Pikmin 3 that's potentially coming out soon too. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the next actual main new Monolith Soft game. Normally, the window of time in which they announce their games and then release their games is within a year. And again, I feel like that's something that could potentially be the opener or a closer for one of the big Nintendo Directs this year. We don't know what exactly beyond those definitive editions and support on other big Nintendo first-party games that Monolith Soft has been working on. But again, they've been working on something. There's 2 teams over at Monolith Soft now, so no doubt we are going to see their new project in 2026. And again, I do think it's going to release in 2026. Now, while we're on the topic of games that are releasing in 2026, I'm jumping all over the place now. I'm not even looking at my outline anymore because there's just so much I want to talk about. Let's talk a little bit about Fire Emblem and Splatoon. I think both of those games are going to be summer games. I think Splatoon would maybe be more of like an early summer, potentially spring. That game looked pretty finished the last time we saw it. We still know nothing about it, but I do feel like they're going to want to get Splatoon out within the first quote-unquote year. You know, like obviously the Switch 2 came out in June. I think before June, they're going to want to have Splatoon Raiders out. And then I think late June, maybe early July, at the latest September is when we end up getting the next Fire Emblem game. I am so unbelievably excited for Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave. The fact that it looks like it's building off of 3 houses, that they're bringing Sothis back, it makes me thrilled. I loved Fire Emblem Engage. I thought Engage was a really solid game, and I thought the minute-to-minute gameplay of Engage was really good too, but I was not a fan of the VTuber ultra saturated style of the characters. I think some of them look really cool, and there are some characters like Ivy that I really like in Fire Emblem Engage, but I think for the most part, I dug the cast and the overall world and the vibes of 3 Houses more, even if I think the actual maps, like the actual Fire Emblem gameplay that you know and love, the tactical gameplay, I think in some parts was actually better in Engage than it was in 3 Houses. But I'm stoked for Fortune's Weave, and again, I think that's a late summer game. Now, we talked about Fortune's Weave. We talked about Splatoon. We talked about Pokopia. That's coming out very soon. I brought that up earlier in the video. I don't really care to talk about Yoshi or Mario Tennis because I'm not like super interested in those. I will play them probably for a little bit. I'll definitely dabble with Yoshi. Like, Yoshi is a weird franchise for me. Yoshi is very hit or miss. I love Yoshi's Story. I know a lot of people think that game is mediocre. I love Yoshi's Story. I can go back and play Yoshi's Story all the time. And I do love like the visual style of this new Yoshi game. But again, for me, the fact that I don't even remember the name of the game says that it's not super high on my list this year. But again, I'm interested in playing it. And again, I loved parts of Mario Tennis Aces, but I'm kind of getting sick of some of these Mario sports games, and I'm honestly a little salty they're going back to Mario Tennis before touching something like Mario Baseball or even going back to like Mario Hoops again. Like, I would much rather have a baseball or a hoops game when you could literally already play Mario Golf and Mario Tennis, the Switch games, on Switch 2. Like, those games I feel like could really benefit from Switch 2 editions, so then they could just focus on new Mario sports instead. But alas, it is what it is. We're getting what we're getting. It's just probably not for me, and that's fine. However, there is one game that I brought up earlier that I actually think is going to slip out of the 2026 schedule, and that unfortunately is the Duskbloods. Now, obviously, I'm very excited about the fact that FromSoft is making an exclusive game on Switch 2, and I'm somebody who actually really enjoyed Elden Ring Night Rain. So if the rumors are to be believed, and this is more of a multiplayer-focused FromSoft game, I'm totally fine with that. However, they have been having a lot of issues getting Elden Ring on Switch 2 to run properly. You know, this was a lot of talk towards the end of last year during some of those trade show events. People were playing it at TGS and Gamescom and saying that Elden Ring on Switch 2 was looking a little rough, and then obviously the game got delayed to 2026. So we will be playing that this year at the very least. I just don't think we're going to be playing the Duskbloods in 2026. I think that's a shame too, because that game could really fit in nicely in that October slot for Nintendo. And could you imagine if we got the 1-2 punch of Duskbloods, a more like mature horror, scary kind of macabre game in October, paired with Luigi's Mansion, which is like baby's first horror game? I think that would be an awesome combination, but alas, I don't know. Luigi's Mansion just makes sense with the Mario anniversary, and considering the fact they've been cagey showing us more of Duskbloods and Elden Ring got delayed, I feel like if anything is going to slip to 2027, that is probably going to be the game. Now, obviously, I've covered a lot of topics today. Zelda's anniversary, Mario's anniversary, Dragon Quest's anniversary, the Final Fantasy games on Switch 2, the games we already know about for 2026 on Switch 2, the entertainment stuff, the Mario Galaxy end credits scene that I predicted, you know, the stuff with Hyrule in Epic Universe. There's a lot that I've gone over, but I still haven't given my big wild card, big swing prediction for 2026. People are going to call me crazy, and that's fine. But look, it's me, RogersBase, talking to you right now. I love Smash Brothers more than anything else. And I think it is important to note that currently, right now in 2026, we are sitting at the longest gap ever between releases of Smash Brothers games. Brawl came out in 2008. Smash Wii U and 3DS then came out in 2014. Then Smash Ultimate came out in 2018. And now it is 2026, and there is still no sign of the next mainline Smash Brothers game. Now, I know Sakurai has been hard at work at Kirby Air Riders. I know Sakurai has mentioned on multiple occasions that he could not imagine a Smash Brothers game without him. But I think his wording was very specific when he said that. He could not imagine a Smash game without him. Not necessarily that he could not imagine a Smash game without him directing it. Something that I have not seen people talking about at all that I think is very important to bring up is the fact that Sakurai is getting older. Sakurai is not just going to be making Smash Brothers forever, right? Nintendo reached out to him to make Kirby Air Riders. We all thought initially when Kirby Air Riders was announced that he went to them as a passion project to basically be like, let me make Kirby Air Riders and then I'll make the next Smash Brothers game. That's not the case. They asked him to make Kirby Air Riders. We also know now that there's two teams at Bandai Namco working on first-party Nintendo games, Team A and Team S. One of those teams we now know was working on Kirby Air Riders. One of those other teams has been working on something quietly since the end of Smash Ultimate's DLC. What could that possibly be? And I think it's even more telling that they outright announced that Kirby Air Riders isn't getting any DLC at all. Apparently there's going to be a couple little in-game events and maybe like a balance patch or two, but Sakurai has outright confirmed they are not doing DLC for Kirby Air Riders. They're not making a sequel. They're not making it a series. He gave the game his all. Please enjoy. The warning bells are going off in my head. He's making a Smash Brothers game. Now, mind you, I'm not saying he's directing the next Smash Brothers game. That is extremely important because I think there's a lot of different directions that this could go in, and we'll talk about all of them during this video. I do just genuinely believe the next Smash Brothers is sooner than people are thinking. I think the DLC of Smash Ultimate and when they came out, that paired with COVID at that same time and like how people's time and perception is kind of skewed by everything. Sora came out in 2021. It is now 2026. It has now been more than double the time between the end of the DLC roadmap for Smash Wii U to the release of Smash Ultimate than it has been from now, the end of the Smash Ultimate DLC in 2021, to where we are in 2026 with no Smash Brothers game in sight. Also, if you're just removing the DLC from the equation, this is the single longest gap ever that we've had without a Smash Brothers game. The original Smash Brothers came out in 1999. The GameCube launched in 2001. 2 months later, we got Smash Brothers Melee, right? Then we had a 7-year gap. We had a 7-year gap from Melee to Brawl. Brawl came out in 2008, within the first 2 years of the Wii's lifespan. And then, in 2014, 6 years after that, we got Smash for Wii U and 3DS, right? And that also came out within 2 years of the Wii U's lifespan. And they announced it before the Wii U was really like fully detailed. They were just basically like, hey, we're getting a Smash Brothers game. It's in development for both 3DS and Wii U. And there were 2 games developed in that time. Again, they share characters, they share assets, but there were 2 Smash games. You can hear Obi in the background screaming and barking because he agrees with me. And then following the end of that DLC, we had Smash Ultimate in 2018 and the end of the DLC roadmap in 2021. The time is ripe for a Smash Brothers game. We are going to get a Smash Brothers game within the first 2 years of the Switch 2's lifespan. Now, whether that is a Switch 2 edition of Smash Brothers Ultimate or that's a new, built from the ground up Smash Brothers game, that is still yet to be determined. But we are, for sure, getting some type of new Smash Brothers game within the next 2 years. Again, there's always, in the first 2 years of a Nintendo system, something Smash Brothers related. Now, again, if he is directing it, then I think it's more likely that it's actually going to be a Ultimate Switch 2 edition, right? That we essentially get the equivalent of another Challenger Pass, 7 or 8 characters, but you already have so much content that was added with those other first 2 fighter passes that if you put both of those on the cartridge, right, with the base version of the Switch 2 edition, you have all the DLC characters, all the DLC stages, all the music. You maybe throw in like 200 new spirits, like another fighter pass worth of characters, like 6 or 7 characters, and maybe like one big new single player mode. Maybe they bring back Smash Run. Maybe they have some type of roguelike mode. Maybe they bring back adventure mode, whatever. It's not going to matter. They can do something and make a Switch 2 edition of Ultimate that Sakurai could reasonably have developed in the time that he's had to develop a Smash thing. However, again, I am leaning more on the side that he's actually not directing the next Smash and that he's overseeing it, that he's helping someone else, his successor, make the next Smash game. Because genuinely, and he said this before, where do you go from Ultimate? Unless you build upon Ultimate with a Switch 2 edition with a bunch of new characters and a bunch of new stages and implement the stuff that's already there, you're going to upset some people. Characters are going to be cut if you end up doing a reboot, and the time is right for a reboot. Mario, Donkey Kong, Link, Samus, all of these characters that have been staples for the Smash Bros. Franchise have way more moves in their disposal. You've got Samus with the psychic moves from Metroid Prime 4, and you've got the Viola motorcycle. You've got the counter from Samus Returns. You've got Donkey Kong with the full Bonanza moveset, picking up rocks out of the ground and throwing them at people. You've got Mario with Cappy and potentially Odyssey mechanics. And you've got Link with all the stuff from Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom and the Ultra Hand and Stasis and crazy stuff that you could do with that character. I think this would be a smart opportunity for them to hand off the series to somebody else to direct while still having Sakurai around to oversee it and make sure that the game turns out well and is up to his standards. And again, the time is right. History doesn't lie. There's always been a Smash game in the first 2 years of a system. Whether you want to believe me or not, it's happening. One way or another, within the next 2 years, we're going to know about Smash Brothers. And because of that, I really do think that summer this year, or potentially like fall at the latest, we get the reveal of the next Smash Brothers game in development. And I think it comes out summer 2027. So that's my big swing. The hype cycle for the next Smash Brothers begins in 2026. And with that, I predict I am now officially out of predictions. This was so much fun to put together. I always love writing these outlines of what I think is going to happen with Nintendo each year. And I really do think a lot of my predictions are relatively reasonable. I know normally I go kind of crazy with the predictions and I talk about all the things that could happen. I really did try to keep this to things that I genuinely believe will happen or have a high likelihood of happening. Again, I know that a lot of people are going to hear that Smash Brothers thing at the end and be like, there's no chance. But again, I think I laid out my argument pretty well, and we're just going to have to wait to find out. Now, with that being said, here's the fun part. I am now throwing it to all of you to answer, what is your big prediction for Nintendo in 2026? This is going to be the member poll for this week. As always, if you're a member on my YouTube channel, you go to the community tab, you write your answer down in the comment section below, and if you see that your answer was already given by someone else, please just upvote that answer so it's a little easier for me to track when I give the answers on next week's show. Speaking of, it's time for me to reveal the answers to the previous member question, which is, what game, movie, or TV series are you most looking forward to in 2026? The number one answer, no surprise here considering my audience, was the Super Mario Galaxy movie, which I am also extremely excited for. I really did love that first Mario movie, and I just love the Mario Galaxy games, so I do think it'll be a lot of fun to actually see those characters and those environments come to life. But there were some other really good answers as well. One of the other big ones that I saw was the second season of One Piece live action. Again, not a huge surprise. That has been delayed for a long period of time, and of course, I have a very One Piece centric audience, so I'm not shocked to see that. Some people mentioned Gen 10 of Pokemon, a couple people mentioned Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave, but again, the number one was definitely Super Mario Galaxy movie. So again, a little surprising. I really did think think One Piece was going to land a little bit higher, but again, people answering this are probably mostly Nintendo fans, so it makes sense. Now, with that being said, I want to get a little bit into games that I have been playing over the course of the holiday break. I have been playing and watching a lot of stuff, and I always like to take this opportunity to just share a little bit of insight of what's going on behind the camera every single week. Now, first and foremost, I want to talk about the games that I've been playing. I've mostly been playing three things. First off, daily, I've been playing Kirby Air Riders. I am slowly but surely chipping away at that checklist. I currently have 100 plus checks in every single category in all of the different checklists, whether it's road trip, online, city trial, everything. I've been slowly making my way through it, and it's been really fun to see people reaching out on social media and saying that they actually saw me in their city trial rooms. That was very cool. I just click random and go on ranked, and whatever room I end up in, I end up in. But I actually ended up in a match with Hungry Box the other day. I've seen some other people online, so it's cool to see other creators still playing Kirby Air Riders and knowing that I am not alone. Again, I have always loved the original Kirby Air Ride game, and we have a pretty active Kirby Air Riders community here as well. So if you're at all a fan and you want to play Kirby Air Riders, or you're looking for people to play with, click the link in my description to my Discord server. Join the Kirby Air Riders room. You get your cute little Kirby Air Riders roll, and it's going to be really easy to link up with people and play the game with others. And also, again, I am planning on doing more member community game nights with Kirby Air Riders as the year goes on. That's just one of those games that I don't see myself 100%ing the checklist anytime soon, but I just think it is the perfect stream game. You're in and out in like 5 minutes. You have little funny moments in the paddock, and you're good to go. In terms of the characters I've been using, though, this is a little weird. Obviously, if you watched that original stream that I did of Kirby Air Riders, you know I'm a big fan of Rick and Chef Kawasaki. I am sad to report I almost never use Chef Kawasaki anymore. I still use Rick, of course. The internet's biggest Hamtaro fan. Naturally, I'm going to play with the giant hamster. He's great. But I've actually been playing with Starman a lot. I feel like it's incredibly useful to be able to be the first one to glide up to that island on the top of the city trial map, get all those power-ups, and then build up your glide even further to land in one of the other islands surrounding that, and then you just become all-powerful and you pretty much win every event. That's how I've been ranking up as easily as I've been ranking up. So instead of using Chef Kawasaki alongside Rick, it's mostly been Starman and Rick. I will also say, too, I've had so much fun playing more of Top Ride. That's something that I actually really didn't love in the first Air Ride. I thought it was cute, but I definitely spent way more time playing City Trial. I'm actually really enjoying Top Ride now. I'm just enjoying doing the checklists and doing all the little challenges and doing like 1 lap or 2 lap races and trying to complete everything. I like trying out all the different machines. Speaking of machines, I actually have a machine to share with you guys. Last night, I designed a really cool Wii Remote looking Formula Star. If you want to download this one, I will put the machine market code up on the screen. And don't forget, we also have the specialty Japan time themed Warp Star as well. That'll be up on the screen for the video version, and I'll put it in the description for the audio version of this week's show as well. But yeah, I've just been loving Kirby Air Riders. I loved it from the first day. I plan to play tons more of it. I think I've already put like 60 hours into that game. I have no doubt that's going to double over the course of the next year. Now, something else that I've also been playing a lot of, and this is for a reason, is Yakuza Kiwami 1 and 2. Now, some of you know I did a sponsored stream for Yakuza Kiwami 1 and 2 for the Switch 2 editions right before I left for the Christmas break. I did a whole live stream. It was a lot of fun playing through the opening of 2 and then carrying my save file over from when Kiwami first came out on Switch 1 the previous year. It was in 2024 when I did that big Bakamitai cover. Dude, I love these games. I remember enjoying Kiwami the first time that I played through it on PC. I did not remember just how much I liked it and how good the story was, the different plot twists. I mean, I'm not going to get into it here because I really do want more people to get into that franchise, but man, Kiwami is awesome. And Kiwami 2 is like way better than it has any right to be. I actually feel like I like the combat in Kiwami 2 more than Kiwami 1, because in 1, you know, you switch between like the beast style and then the dragon style. an agile style, and you're going between all four of them. In 2, you basically just have your move sets, and then as you're eating and you're building up more of your XP, you don't have to switch between everything, and instead you switch between the weapons that you pick up. So like if you're in the middle of a fight and somebody has a katana and they drop the katana, you can then put it away for the next fight, break it out, and take out one of the bosses. I'm not going to get into story spoilers, because again, the main core of what makes these games great is the awesome story. What I will say, I just got to chapter 12 of Kiwami 2 on the Switch 2 edition, which is the Osaka Castle chapter. Bro! not to blow out your eardrums, but man, oh man, the fights in that chapter are so cool. The set pieces, there's a certain thing that you do about halfway through that Osaka Castle sequence that is just so awesome. And it's paired with the fact that like I've been to Osaka Castle before. So the way that chapter opens up and you see like the quote unquote secret of Osaka Castle, I was losing it. I thought it was awesome. I'm also spending so much time in the Cabaret Club stuff. I think that is such a fun little mini game. Honestly, the one thing, I know a lot of people who've been playing the game really do like playing Mahjong in it. The only other real like tabletop game that I've been playing in Kiwami 2 is Koi Koi. And that's just because obviously I know how to play Hanafuda because of Clubhouse games, but I've been having a blast with that too. So yeah, Yakuza Kiwami 1 and 2. I already beat Yakuza Kiwami 1. If you watched my member stream from New Year's Eve, actually, you'd know that that was the very last game that I beat in 2025. And it's looking right now that the very first game I'm going to beat in 2026 is going to be Yakuza Kiwami 2. And again, the big reason for that is, of course, Yakuza Kiwami 3 and Dark Ties. That's coming out, I believe, in March. So I have plenty of time. Again, I'm on chapter 12 of Kiwami 2. I feel like if I no life it for like a day and then maybe do like a live stream with the Majima chapters, I'll probably be caught up and good to go by the time that Kiwami 3 comes out. And those games are such a vibe to stream. They are just so much fun to do like a late night stream, do a little side mission, do funny voices for the characters, build up your character, and then you're good to go. I feel like I definitely want to do more of that for Kiwami 3, even if it just ends up being like a member playthrough or something. I've just really found myself falling into this like gameplay loop with Yakuza that, ironically enough, for being like a beat 'em up action game, is actually just incredibly cozy. I am having a really good time with it. And on that topic of beat 'em up action style games that also feel very cozy, I am proud to announce I have now officially 100% completed Donkey Kong Bonanza. Now, I had already said previously on my Game of the Year video last year that I 100%ed all of Donkey Kong Bonanza, the base game. 1,000 bananas, every mission, everything. Now, over the course of the Christmas break, I have 100%ed all of the Emerald Rush content for Donkey Kong Bonanza, including the events they did for Jungle Beat and the Lanky Kong Chunky Kong event. So now I'm ready to go. Whenever they end up doing the inevitable Tiny Kong event, I will probably end up streaming it. And just overall, man, I had such a blast playing Emerald Rush. I wish they would end up doing more DLC. I don't think they will. They're probably already working on the next project, but man, Donkey Kong Bonanza was awesome, wasn't it? And again, if you haven't already watched my full playthrough, I have a full playthrough of that game right here on the YouTube channel. Is it 3 parts or 4 parts? I don't remember. You can go check it out for yourself. But God, what a great game. Now, okay, I've talked about what I've been playing. Now let's talk a little bit about what I've been watching as well, because I know a lot of people have been asking me about my thoughts on Stranger Things final season. Now, I gotta be honest with you, I did not love season 4 of Stranger Things. I did not like when they took the gory turn with that series. Peak Stranger Things to me was like season 3 and the stuff with the Starcourt Mall, and of course the first season of Stranger Things is really good. But I will say, despite like the mixed reception that this new final season has gotten, I actually kind of liked the final episode. Without getting into spoilers, I liked who had the final play of the game. If you know what I'm talking about with Vecna. I thought that moment was really well done. And I feel like the entire epilogue portion where you see what happens to the characters was really good too. Again, without diving into spoilers, because I don't know who's already watched it, I'm not going to get too much into it. What I will say is I am of the belief that what that character speculated happened is probably what ended up happening, because that would make sense for whatever the eventual spinoff is going to be. I believe they've already said that the spinoff is not going to involve that character. It's going to be a new cast somewhere else. I don't believe it. I feel like Stranger Things is one of those huge franchises now that I think they're going to milk until the cows come home. I think eventually there will be some new Stranger Things thing when all those kids are completely grown up and they're going to be adults with their own kids, and those kids are going to go on adventures, and it's all going to connect at some point. But for the time being, I actually thought it wrapped up kind of nicely. I think overall, the final season was a little boring. I think they were a little too expository with some things. I did like the reveal at the end of episode 4. I thought that was kind of cool. But for the most part, again, I enjoyed it. I think it wrapped up in a satisfying way as somebody who's been watching this from the beginning. But I'm also happy that it ended now, because I think I was getting to the point where I was getting pretty sick of Stranger Things. I think they tried for a while to be like, this is really it. Now we're finally going to beat the big bad. Well, this is really it. We're finally going to beat the big bad. And then they faked us out with season 4, and then we got the other season afterwards. After they said it was already going to be the final season, I'm like, I'm done with it now. I'm good. I'm happy to take the break. I know they're doing like the animated show or whatever. That's not going to be for me. I'm just going to end it off here, like I said, until the inevitable spin-off 20 years from now when all the kids are grown up. The other thing I've been watching on Netflix recently, I watched the entire new season of Man on the Inside, which is the Ted Danson comedy where he plays the old guy that basically goes undercover as a PI. Again, not going to get into story spoilers, but I thought this entire season was incredibly cute. If you like The Good Place, if you were a fan of that series, I think you will absolutely eat this one up. And it's just kind of like wholesome comedy. I feel like nowadays there's a lot of really raunchy shows with a lot of swearing and a lot of sex and drugs and violence. And this is not that at all. This is literally for old people. And I've always said this about myself. Maybe I'm an old person at heart. Maybe that's why I'm enjoying it. But Man on the Inside was really good. And the last thing I want to talk about in this week's Roger Roundup is not something that I've played or that I've been watching, but this is something that I actually haven't watched yet. I've heard a lot of people telling me that I got to watch the Avatar Fire and Ash movie while it's still in theaters. I gotta be honest, like, I didn't love the second one. I thought the first Avatar was really good. I thought the special effects in the second Avatar were great, but I have not wanted to go back and like watch that movie again. But I do feel like I should probably see the third Avatar while it's in theaters. I also know they're playing like the Doomsday trailers before them. I gotta be honest, like, I'm not super interested in any of that right now either. I'm a little like just burned out on Marvel in general. I feel like the first 2 teasers, the Steve Rogers one didn't do it for me, and neither did the Thor one. Though I will say the X-Men one, that was pretty neat. Like seeing Professor X, seeing Magneto, seeing Cyclops, having them look as good as they look, that was pretty cool. I'm hyped to see that. But yeah, overall, I don't know. I'm just fatigued on like a lot of Disney franchises right now. So I'll definitely go see Doomsday, but I'm not like super looking forward to it like I probably would have been, 6-7 years ago. And speaking of Fire and Ash, that will bring me to answering your burning questions for this week's episode of Touch Base with RogersBase. As always, if you want to have your question answered potentially on the show, you become a member at the Nakama tier and up, sync your YouTube membership with the Discord server, you'll get the role to enter the Touch Base room, and then you can submit your questions. Now, let's get into some of these. The first one this week comes from King Waffle, who said, I'm sure this question has come up before, but I'm curious. Which One Piece characters would you choose as Gorosei in a new world order after the story is over? For instance, having Lilith be the godhead of science and defense, or Dragon as the godhead of justice. I'm going to give a very easy answer to this one. I don't want any new Gorosei. I don't want any new world order at the end of One Piece. I want everyone to be free. I could maybe see a world in which there's new Marines, like the good Marines, quote unquote, right? Your Kobes and your Drakes and your Smokers, just so there's some type of order. But in terms of, having like elders or someone at the top of the empty throne, absolutely not. I think, to be honest, we'd be in better hands if Lilith and some of the Vegapunks all became the new elders, because again, they're all pretty old anyway. They all share Vegapunk's brain, but realistically, my answer to this one's a simple one. It's that I don't want any. Maybe Chopper. Maybe Chopper could be like the godhead of medicine or something. I would trust Chopper, but there's not very many characters in the world of One Piece that I would trust with that level of power. Now, this next one comes from Clax, who said, what are 5 of the most memorable characters in gaming in the past 5 years? One for each year, 2021 to 2025. I'm okay with characters that technically debuted earlier, as long as they got a game in that year, and what makes those characters stand out to you. So I actually looked up release years of games so that I could come up with a good list of characters. I'm pretty happy with this. All right, 2021, I put Ravenbeak from Metroid Dread. I just think he oozed aura. I would love to see him in Smash Brothers. It was great to have a humanoid Metroid villain that was actually cool. And I think having played through Metroid Prime 4 Beyond and not like really loving Psylocke, it made me appreciate Ravenbeak more. Okay, 2022, I put the cast of Triangle Strategy. If you watched my playthrough, you know I absolutely adore the story and the characters of Triangle Strategy, and it was very difficult to sort of narrow it down to just one of them because your interactions with each character directly change the story at large. So I couldn't just say one person. I couldn't just say Benedict or Sarah Noah. I have to go with the entire cast. It's cheating. I don't care. It's my show. I'm going to do what I want to do. 2023, I put Farina, who is basically the main character of my favorite Genshin arc, which is Fontaine. And 2024, I put my favorite character of my favorite Honkai Star Rail arc, which is Black Swan. And that will then finally take me to 2025, which is Void Kong. I know there's a lot of people who probably expected me to say an Expedition 33 character, and I do love that entire cast, but I gotta be real, I need Void Kong in every Donkey Kong game moving forward, especially now that I've gone through all of Emerald Rush. I just think he is such a fun, little goofy gremlin of a character. I hope he's an assist trophy in the next Smash Brothers game, or whatever, or a boss. I don't really care. But I want more of Void Kong in the future. I never thought I was going to have another Donkey Kong villain that I liked as much as King K. Rool. And now, here we are in 2026, and I just totally love Void Kong. So, that's my answer to your question, Clax. Thank you very much for that one. The next one comes from Misty H92 with a fun little reminisce question, who said, what were some of your favorite on-stream moments of 2025? Some of mine included the Expedition 33 playthrough, the Kuma flashback episodes, and the member reverie. I have two that immediately stick out. As soon as you asked me this question, I thought of both of these. One is that 24-hour stream we did for 400K. That was so much fun having my friends come over, chatting with all of you, playing through a bunch of different games, doing the Hamtaro happy hour. That was an absolute blast. And honestly, it was always a goal of mine to at some point do some type of 24-hour stream. So the fact that we managed to do it and that it went off really without a hitch was great. And that will always be a treasured moment for me. Another stream moment that I really loved in 2025, I mean, the Bonanza playthrough is another one. I know you already mentioned Expedition 33. I think the Bonanza playthrough was great. I'm actually going to go with the stream in which we beat all of Mario Odyssey in one sitting, because when I sat down for that stream, I was only planning on playing a couple hours of it, and the fact that we managed to get through the entire thing, and it sort of like renewed my love for that game, because I've always liked Mario Odyssey, right? Mario Odyssey is a great Mario game, but I think as time went on, I started to like appreciate it less, which is kind of weird. And I started to look back at like some of the older Mario games, like the Galaxy games, and I looked at them in a better light than I looked at Odyssey. And then when I replayed Odyssey and I saw it in 4K and I got to play through the whole thing again on Switch 2, I was like, oh no, actually, this game is pretty magical. This is one of the best Mario games. And so I found like a newfound appreciation from Odyssey from that playthrough. So I would say that Odyssey stream as well. But again, I've had so many great on-stream moments. It's just been a blast hanging out with all of you. And I agree, the member reverie was another really fun one. I'm looking forward to doing more of that in 2026. Now, we got another one, which is directly on topic with the show today. This one is from Stefan Dog, who said, how do you feel with the Switch 2 launch year and how it compares to the original Switches? I think so far the top-end releases like Bonanza and Mario Kart have been strong, as well as third-party support, but Metroid Prime and Age of Imprisonment, while I enjoyed them, haven't impressed me as much personally. Overall, I think Switch launch had a better lineup with Breath of the Wild, Odyssey, Xenoblade 2, and ARMS, but what are your opinions on this? And by the way, wishing everyone the best for the year ahead. Thank you very much, Stefan Dog. You know, I've been thinking about this a lot recently because I did that discussion video with Fidel back when we were in Japan talking about the first 6 months of Switch 2. You know, we're not even technically through the first year of the Switch 2 yet. We will be in June. So I feel like I'll be better prepared to answer that then. But I will say, like, just as I brought up earlier on today's video, I feel like the lineup for Switch 2 for those first 6 months was really solid. And, you know, Breath of the Wild is just one of those things that you can't fully replicate, so it's tough to compare. I mean, I feel like I still like Breath of the Wild more than I like Donkey Kong Bonanza, and those would probably be the two top games that I would compare against. But I loved Pokemon Legends ZA, and I really enjoyed Mario Kart World, and I love Kirby Air Riders. And I do think that's kind of comparable to Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and Mario Odyssey and ARMS for me. So it's really tough to say. I think right now I am in agreement that probably the Switch 1 year was stronger, the first year of Switch 1, than the first year of Switch 2. But again, we're not through the first full year of Switch 2 yet. So maybe I'll answer this a little bit later. And, I'll loop back to this. I'll loop back to this in June. But right now, I would say I'm giving the edge slightly to Switch 1. Oh, we got another question coming from Sri, who said, Roger, Happy New Year. Hope this is a great one for you. I was wondering, what were your favorite anime episodes or manga chapters in 2025? And conversely, what were your least favorite? I can tell you right now, my favorite manga chapter of 2025 was most definitely the mural chapter of One Piece. If you know, you know. That's not even a question. I would say my favorite anime episode is probably the Kuma flashback episodes of One Piece as well. And I don't even have to think about it. My least favorite anime of this past year was One Punch Man Season 3. I don't know what was going on with that. I loved the first season of One Punch Man. I got my start here on YouTube doing reviews of the first season. And to see that massive drop in quality was just like extremely sad for me. So I'm excited to see what's going to come out this year. But I do feel like unquestionably, my favorite anime episodes were definitely the Kuma flashback. My favorite manga chapter was definitely Mural Piece, and my least favorite overall anything related to anime and manga is One Punch Man Season 3. And finally, the last question this week comes from DGC, who said, Roger, seeing as you cook a lot, I would like to know, what are your favorite dishes that you enjoy making? You can tweet at Reagan. She can confirm it. I make a mean grilled cheese. I like making designer grilled cheeses on sourdough bread with multiple types of cheese. You layer like the pepper jack and the Munster. You grill up onions, you grill up peppers. You get some really good meat to throw on there. I love getting pork belly from my local Japanese grocery store, slicing that real thin, layering it with the pepper jack and with the Munster, throwing the grilled onions on there and having a pork belly grilled cheese. Woo! I am a fan of that. I also really like making yakisoba. I made yakisoba for the first time during that One Piece Chowdown thing that I did back in like 2022 for Viz. And I've made it a lot since then. There's just something comforting about a good bowl of yakisoba. I also really like making ribs. Like full slab, dry rub ribs. I have a good time making them. There's this really good rub that's local to Chicago. It's called Riley's Rib. And you just rub it on the top of it. There's all different types of spices. And I usually put a little bit of that on. And then I bake the ribs until they're ready to fall off the bone. And then about 30 minutes before I take them out, I put a layer of barbecue sauce, which is also Riley's Rib sauce. Yo, shout out to Riley's Ribs, by the way, in Homewood, Illinois. Shout out to you guys. I put like a layer of the sauce on there, and then I let it cook for another 30 minutes. And then it just bakes on really, really nicely, and you take them out, and then the meat falls off the bones. So yeah, that's something I also really enjoy making. But yeah, I love cooking. Let me know if you want me to do another cooking video in 2026. Maybe I'll put together like a members cooking stream or something like that. That could be a lot of fun. But with that being said, I think that is going to wrap up Touch Base with RogersBase for this week. Thank you all so much once again for listening. I hope you enjoyed all of my Nintendo predictions, and I will be back next week with another episode. So until then, like, comment, subscribe, and until next time, I'll talk to you guys later. Nakama!